Hello, and salutations, my friends. Today, I'll be bringing you all my review of Merchants of Rosewall. This game was developed and published by Big Blue Sky Games on March 4th, 2025. And it essentially acts as a shopkeeping management game where you play as a new merchant in the city of Rosewall who has just opened up a franchise under the Estoke Trading Company. Your goal is to, well, make tons of profit and establish yourself firmly within the city as a great merchant. And while doing this, you'll also meet tons of characters who will help you throughout your journey and add flavor to the world. So, to go into the game's story, shortly after arriving in Rosewall, you basically stumble across a potential conspiracy that can possibly doom the whole city. So, you work alongside some cork gnome, whatever that is. They introduced it in the game and I didn't even know what that was. But this cork gnome is named Seagull, and you also have a few other friends who work with you to basically uncover what this conspiracy is all about. And while I obviously can't talk about the full story for a variety of reasons, I feel like the story was decent overall, at least as far as I've made it into it. I felt like with each plot point, you did want to know what happened throughout the game and what happened next, and for the main characters, like what they're all about. And while it wasn't the best story ever, I thought it was a decent story. However, at the start, it felt really unnatural, as you were just kind of just thrown into the conspiracy out of nowhere, and this happened while you were trying to figure out how to use the mechanics of the game, like the merchanting, figuring out the world, and just all of that. So it was just kind of overwhelming and chaotic towards the start. However, I'd say that after like an hour or so, I was pretty understanding of the whole theme of the game and what they're going for. So yeah, I felt like it was pretty solid overall. And in regards to the game's world building and its world overall, I thought it was wonderfully crafted. Like, the game's setting is really solid, it has lots of diverse characters and things you would expect in a fantasy world, and it's also blended with the familiarity of the modern day and, I don't know, industrial era society, I guess that's what you would call it. And while it took a bit to understand the whole world as a whole, as I mentioned earlier, I thought that it was well crafted overall. But despite this, while the main quest characters are fleshed out, your companions and other side characters feel pretty underdeveloped. They look cool, but they just don't have much personality or meaningful interactions beyond their initial introduction. Since this game is called Merchants of Rosewall, the core gameplay revolves around, well, being a merchant, and your goal is to source, produce, and sell a variety of materials across multiple industries. And in this game, your shop isn't just a storefront, as you also have workshops where your goods are created, and this includes the kitchen, the smithing room, the masonry room, the tailoring room, the woodworking room, and the artistry room, which allows you to create everything from food to fine art. But since you're not a master craftsman yourself, you gotta hire companions to work in these rooms. And you can do this at the guild hall, where new workers are periodically available for hire, but to work, you gotta have raw materials, so that means you have to head to the market and source your supplies at the right price. And this brings me to one of the best aspects of the gameplay, and I'd say it's the sheer variety of goods that you can craft and the interconnectedness between the different industries. On paper, the system is incredibly appealing, as higher level recipes require materials from multiple industries, making it satisfying to plan out your production chains. And to give you an idea on how this works, I'll give a quick tutorial on how crafting a high level item would be like. Okay, so I'll give an example on how I create a certain artistry product. So here we can see that I will sort of cue the pine plank for that person, and then a pine dowel for the other one. And then we can see that we produce these sort of base components. You can tell that they're, it's just a pine plank and a pine dowel. But then I go over to the artistry, and then we see that here's a drafting pencil. I make one of these, which requires the pine dowel that I just made. And then we go over to the smithy, or the masonry place, where we produce the carbon, which I produce from pine logs, and now I can use the carbon for the artistry to make the, drafting pencil. And we can see that I'm gonna, do the drafting pencil right there. And once I do that, we go over to one of the actual final products that we'd make, which is the Gloriata Road Specs. And this sells for pretty high, as you can see. So yeah, it requires a lot. So it requires the ruler, which needs a pine plank, which also needs the drafting pencil that we just made. And we can see that it also needs composition papers, which needs cotton fibers, which is from a whole other thing. That's from tailoring. And we can see that it just involves a lot of different materials. And that's how sort of the high level crafting works in this game. And yeah, that's one of my best money makers for me in the game. But yeah, as fun as the system can be, I think that there are some serious flaws that drag it down, which I'll get into now. Unfortunately, the gameplay has a lot of issues, starting with how restrictive and stagnant the merchanting mechanics feel. Honestly, there's no way to automate any task for your workers, or hire people to handle market orders for you. In real life, as a business grows, the owner shifts into a managerial role rather than handling every single detail personally, but here I feel like you're always an employee rather than a true business owner. And that leads me to another disappointment, which would be the guild hall. I was expecting a dynamic system where I can basically choose between workers with different skill sets. I'll just weigh their pros and cons and strategically build my workforce, and specializing in certain different things and industries that I cared about. But instead, this game just essentially chooses your workers for you with little input on which industries you specialize in. And this, combined with the lack of automation, just makes the crafting of the complex products and things like that just more frustrating than fun. You constantly have to manually keep track of multi-step crafting chains, and after a while it just becomes tedious. Like, sure, I showed my sort of multi-crafting, tutorial thingy-mabob earlier, but honestly, that's only works because I've only specialized in that, and that's my main moneymaker. I basically do nothing else in this game. I just keep producing that one product, which makes the sort of, interconnectedness and the sheer amount of industries just more lackluster, because it makes you not want to engage with all of the different things that you have available to you, and it's just sad, really. Another major issue, I think, is the kind of dissonance between the story and the gameplay. I feel like the gameplay isn't really connected with the story at hand. Like, you're sort of like, yeah, I'm a merchant on the side, but I'm also solving this conspiracy also. It's just weird, and it's just jarring at the same time too, because your role as a merchant doesn't really come into play for a majority of the story that I've been through. And maybe that will happen later down the road, but right now I've played probably 16 hours of the game, and I still don't see where being a merchant comes into play here. And, well, yet another negative, I'd say, is with the compendium, which is essentially a list of all the crafted goods and raw materials in the game. I feel like this is just another missed opportunity. Because it's a list of all crafted goods and raw materials that you've encountered, I'd say that you would think there would be filters to organize through it once you have a ton of materials that you need to look through, but there just isn't. There's nothing to filter through this and nothing to organize it. It's just, yep, here's your list of crafted goods and raw materials, go at it. And this becomes a huge problem when you need to track down specific materials for seasonal events and market trends that happen. For example, there was an event where southerly items were essentially in high demand, but the game doesn't let you filter for that category, which forced me to either memorize everything or waste time clicking through all of the menus. And with a game with so many different, interconnected parts, it's just a pain to do that. On top of that, some industries were just objectively worse than others. Based on my calculations, even level 5 in the smithing industry made many crafted items just barely turn a profit compared to artistry or cooking, and some even lose money in the smithing industry. I don't understand why that's the case, and when entire industries feel like bad investments, it just hurts the gameplay variety overall. And then there's the biggest issue overall, which is why I couldn't complete the full game, which is a game-breaking bug that basically killed my progress entirely. And then there's the biggest issue of all, and I'd say it's the game-breaking bug that killed my progress entirely and made me not want to play anymore. And that would be the issue with display cases, which are essential for maximizing profits, and they just stopped working entirely. And while I could still sell items on the normal shelves, the loss of display cases made progression way harder. And at this point, I'd already been dealing with my other frustrations, so this bug was just the final straw. And while I won't fully abandon the game, I think that I won't get back to it until this bug is fixed. And if it's never fixed, I can still get through the game, but I really would not enjoy it as much. As I'd say that the display cases really made you feel like you're truly making a profit and you're truly just flexing on everyone, I'd say. However, on a more positive note, the artistic presentation is easily one of the game's strongest aspects. I'd say that the hand-drawn art just looks fantastic, and while there are minor inconsistencies here and there, I think they're not major enough to detract from the overall experience, because it's a hand-drawn game. What do you expect? There's going to be inconsistencies here and there, even though I can't say that word for the life of me. But the character designs are also great. I think that they're diverse, unique, and fitting for the world. And it's clear that the game aims to have a sort of broad range of character representations, but it never feels forced, and it feels like it's never really catering to a specific agenda. So, and while I can't praise the music and sound design as much as I do the visuals, I think that they're solid too. The soundtrack fits the tone of the game well, and I never really felt the need to turn it off. And the sound effects do their job, making actions feel satisfying and punchy. And even with all of my issues, I can confidently say that the artistic presentation is one of the game's few aspects that doesn't have any major issues. And while I couldn't fully complete the game due to the major bug I encountered and am currently waiting on it to be fixed, I can say that I would have easily finished the game with all achievements besides, one, while completing the main story. The only achievement I see being an issue would be fully leveling up a companion, as I was around halfway through the story and I still haven't gotten any of my companions to even level 5, which is the point where you can max out your first skill at S rank. But apart from that, I think that it's a pretty straightforward game to get all achievements in. So overall, I think Merchants of Rosewall had the potential to be something special. The art's fantastic, the world has depth, and I think the crafting system, at least in concept, is really engaging. But the poor management mechanics, a frustrating lack of automation, and the disconnected story prevent it from just reaching its full potential. And with the game-breaking bug on top of that, I think that is hard to recommend it in its current state. I won't completely write it off if the developers fix the issues and maybe add some quality of life improvements, but as it stands right now, I'd approach this one with caution. And due to this, I will be giving the game a 2.5 out of 5 for both normal players and achievement hunters. So yeah, there are my thoughts on Merchants of Rosewall. And hopefully they were just an effective explanation on my experience with the game and what it has to offer. And if you all have any further comments that you want to, make about the game or share your thoughts on the game with, or whatever, I'd say feel free to just leave them in, the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, then liking it would help me out a ton, and I encourage you to subscribe for more content like this. But for now, yeah, I'm off. Take care, everyone.